You're kidding me, right? The fighter laughed, loud and dismissive, the kind of laugh that echoed off the walls of the dimly lit underground gym. This is who you're putting in the ring with me. The woman in front of him didn't flinch. She didn't laugh, she didn't even blink. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, and her sleeveless shirt revealed arms that didn't scream threat. She was shorter by nearly a foot, and looked like she weighed half as much. Her face was calm, too calm for a sparring match against someone nicknamed the Breaker. But let me take you back, before the laughter, before the moment, the world shifted in that one decisive second. 3 years earlier, Sophia had always been the quiet type, not the kind of quiet that came from shyness, more like the kind that came from observing the world a little more closely than most. She worked double shifts at a local diner and took care of her younger brother, Illy, after school. Their mother had passed, and their father, a former boxer turned alcoholic, had disappeared one night and never returned. Sophia had learned 2 things early in life. People don't always keep their promises, and strength doesn't always come in the form people expect. Illy, who had been getting picked on at school, came home with a bloodied lip one day. Sophia cleaned him up, her hands trembling, her mind racing. That night, while Illy slept, she sat on their broken-down couch and stared at the ceiling for hours. The next morning, she walked into a small MMA gym on the edge of the neighborhood, one run by a retired coach named Hector Cruz. "I want to learn," she said. Hector looked her up and down, confused. "Learn what?" "To fight." He blinked. "You got a death wish." "No," she said calmly. "I've got something to protect." Training was brutal. At first, Hector didn't take her seriously. Most people didn't. Sophia was all lean limbs and soft eyes, with a body that looked more suited for dance than destruction. But she came back every day, bloodied and bruised, never complaining, always focused. She studied every move. Watched hours of tape, memorized footwork like it was poetry. Hector started calling her the Ghost because of how quietly she moved. Months turned into years, her body changed, her confidence grew. She started entering underground bouts, building a name, not flashy, not loud, just effective. Cold, calculating precision. She didn't fight with rage, she fought with purpose. Now, let's fast. Forward to the moment again. Back to that gym, to that laugh, to the man standing across the ring, Jack the Breaker Dalton, undefeated in 15 underground fights. A brawler with fists like anvils and an ego to match. The crowd that circled them in the warehouse that night was rowdy. Bets were thrown like insults. Jack's corner men were already celebrating before the bell even rang. Sophia stepped into the ring like a whisper. No music, no hype, just her focused, calm, ready. "Careful, sweetheart." Jack smirked. Wouldn't want to mess up that pretty face. Hector, standing ringside, didn't say a word. He just gave her a nod. The bell rang, and then it happened. Jack came at her like a storm, wide swings, brute force, full confidence. She slipped the first punch like she was made of mist. The second punch missed by inches. The third she parried and countered with a jab so fast the crowd missed it. Jack staggered back, confused. Then she moved. A pivot, a sidestep, a right cross to the ribs that forced the air out of his lungs. He swung again, wild. That's when she dropped him. One step in, a feint, and then a spinning elbow right to the temple. It was like watching a mountain crumble. He hit the mat with a thud that silenced the room. 10 seconds. 10 seconds. The crowd exploded in disbelief. People screamed. Phones shot into the air recording the moment. Sophia didn't bask in the cheers. She just turned, stepped over the ropes, and walked out like it was just another day at work. But the story didn't end there. That moment, that knockdown, went viral. Overnight, Sophia became a symbol, not just of female strength, but of something deeper, quiet resilience. Thousands of messages poured in. Women, girls, single moms, bullied teens all saying the same thing. "You gave me hope." But the fame didn't change her. She used the winnings from the fight to buy a bigger apartment for Illy and herself. She enrolled him in a better school. She kept training, but more than that, she began coaching. She opened a small gym called Silent Strength. No posters of fighters yelling, no booming music, just a quote painted on the wall: "Lions don't need to roar to be feared." Years later, a documentary would be made about Sophia. In one of the interviews, she said, "I never wanted to be the strongest in the room. I just wanted to make sure no one else had to feel powerless like I did. If people laugh at you, let them. If they underestimate you, good. Because when the time comes, they won't see you coming." Sophia didn't look like a fighter, and that's exactly what made her so dangerous. In a world where perception often defines reality, people judged her by her appearance long before she ever threw a punch. She was small, wiry, and quiet. Her demeanor wasn't explosive or aggressive. It was calm, almost too calm for the world she was stepping into. The MMA community, especially in the underground circuits where bravado was currency, didn't know what to make of her. Men laughed, women whispered, some dismissed her as a novelty, a temporary spectacle. They didn't realize they were witnessing the birth of something far more powerful than rage or reputation, the arrival of someone who had already survived her toughest battles long before stepping into the ring. Sophia's story wasn't about chasing fame or glory. She never looked at a championship belt and saw validation. What she sought was control, not over others, but over her own life. Control she had been denied when her mother died too young. When her father disappeared without a trace, when she, barely 17, had to drop out of school and become both sister and parent to Illy, her younger brother. Every unpaid bill, every cold night, every sideways glance from neighbors who expected her to fail, those were her first fights. And she learned to win them not with fists, but with a quiet, relentless determination. When she walked into Hector Cruz's gym that day, she wasn't just asking to be trained. She was demanding to be seen. Hector had been around fighters his whole life. He could spot a hothead or a hopeful from a mile away. But Sophia was different. There was no ego in her eyes, no delusions of grandeur, just a heavy kind of purpose that made even the most hardened brawlers pause. She wasn't there to play tough. She was there to build herself from the ground up. One jab, one bruise, one drop of sweat at a time. Sophia trained like her life depended on it, because in a way it did. Every technique she learned, every repetition she drilled, was a brick in the wall she was building between her and the chaos of her past. She absorbed everything: striking, grappling, submissions, defense, not because she wanted to become the best, but because she couldn't afford to be weak. Not when Illy needed her, not when the world had already tried to write her off as fragile and forgettable. She started fighting in underground matches, not to prove anything to others, but to test the walls she had built within herself. The first time she stepped into the ring, she wasn't nervous, she was ready. She moved like water, uncatchable, untouchable. Her opponents didn't understand her. They were used to people who fought for applause. She fought like she had nothing to lose. Her face gave nothing away, no anger, no fear, only focus. The knockouts began stacking up, quietly, methodically, and with each victory, the laughter started to die down. They stopped calling her sweetheart, and started calling her the Shadow, a force that slipped through defenses and took people apart before they even realized they were in trouble. But still, she never celebrated. She never danced on the mat or shouted at the cameras. She just walked away every time, eyes forward, as if each opponent was just one more ghost she'd laid to rest. And then came Jack Dalton, the Breaker, and everything changed. He represented everything Sophia had been fighting against her whole life: arrogance, violence without reason, the belief that might made right. When he laughed at her in front of that crowd, it wasn't just personal. It was familiar. He reminded her of every man who had dismissed her, every employer who asked her if she was sure she could lift that, every teacher who said she was smart but not really leadership material. His laugh wasn't just about that moment in the gym, it was about a system that assumed power belonged to the loudest voice in the room. And when she knocked him out in under 10 seconds, it wasn't just a victory. It was a statement. That fight became legend, but it wasn't the punch people remembered most. It was her silence after, her refusal to gloat, her exit, just as quiet as her arrival. The world expected noise. Sophia gave them stillness, and in that stillness was the weight of 1,000 battles fought far from any arena. Because the truth is, anyone can train to hit hard, but Sophia had trained to endure. To be underestimated, overlooked, doubted, and to turn all of it into fuel. Her strength wasn't in the knockout. It was in the years she spent walking through storms no one saw, in choosing discipline over despair, in rising every day without applause or recognition. Sophia didn't just win fights, she became the fight. Strength isn't loud, it doesn't need approval, it doesn't always look like muscle or sound like bravado. Sometimes strength is a woman who walked through hell quietly and came out swinging. Sometimes strength is the person who gets back up not to prove a point to the world, but to prove to themselves that they can, and sometimes, the quietest fighter is the one who floors the world one punch at a time. Fade out, emotional music, voiceover, this is for the ones they laughed at. This is for the underestimated, this is for the fighters.